Something significant is unfolding in professional golf right now, and you can sense it before you even glance at a leaderboard. There are rare moments in this sport where one major story is already commanding attention, and then a second one starts developing simultaneously, and suddenly the entire conversation around the game begins to shift. That is precisely where things stand today, because this is not simply about a tournament victory or media coverage. It is about one of the most compelling, controversial, and impossible-to-ignore figures in professional golf suddenly reclaiming the center of everything at a moment when the sport already feels divided, unpredictable, and emotionally charged. For anyone who follows the game closely, this kind of moment matters because when one player catches fire the way Bryson DeChambeau has recently, the energy never stays confined to a single event or a single tour. It bleeds outward into the broader conversation, changes how fans engage, and forces the biggest organizations in golf to start thinking differently behind closed doors. What makes this stretch of time especially compelling is that two separate developments are happening at once. One played out on the course under genuine competitive pressure in a dramatic finish that communicated far more than just a final score, and the other is unfolding away from the fairways entirely, where the reaction to everything may carry more long-term weight than most people are currently willing to admit. Something important just happened in golf, and the honest truth is that the full impact of it has not even landed yet. Bryson DeChambeau did not simply win again. He won back-to-back LIV golf titles, and he did it in a fashion that felt raw, emotionally honest, and genuinely unforgettable. At LIV Golf South Africa in Johannesburg at Stein City, DeChambeau and Jon Rahm both finished at 26 under par after 72 holes of regulation. Bryson then birdied the very first extra hole in the playoff to claim the title and hand Rahm a devastating runner-up finish. It was his second consecutive win following Singapore, and according to Reuters, it was also his fifth LIV golf title overall. What gives this result a weight beyond a standard tournament victory is the circumstances surrounding it. This was not a comfortable wire-to-wire performance where he coasted through a manageable field. Rahm pushed him to the absolute limit, and when you scan the full leaderboard, serious professional names are everywhere. Abraham Answer, Brendan Grace, and Thomas Detry finished at 23 under. David Puig and Dean Burmester sat at 22 under. Richard Bland reached 17 under, while Laurie Cantor, Sergio Garcia, and Cameron Smith all finished at 16 under. Tom McKibben was at 14 under, Dustin Johnson at 12 under, Paul Casey and Tyrrell Hatton at 10 under, Ian Poulter at 7 under, and Lee Westwood at 6 under. Nobody watching that leaderboard can credibly claim this was a thin field or a fortunate week. DeChambeau survived a murderer's row of recognizable international talent and came out on top. The emotional aftermath of the win is what really captured people's attention and shifted the temperature around him. Bryson broke down in genuine tears on camera, and this was not the polished, composed celebration that tour players often deliver in public moments. It was real and unguarded. He said he wished he could fully explain why he was so overcome and acknowledged that a great deal had happened in his personal life over the previous week. He spoke about gratitude toward his team and everyone supporting him. And then he said something that honestly hit differently than standard post-round interview language. He said golf is a fickle game, that you work at it your whole life, and then you realize golf is just golf. That is not the statement of a man celebrating a paycheck or adding hardware to a collection. That is someone carrying real weight and releasing it in the most visible moment possible. And for a player who has always generated extreme reactions from fans, that kind of vulnerability changes the dynamic around him. He stops being simply polarizing or controversial and starts feeling genuinely human again. And that is a powerful shift in how people relate to an athlete. The playoff itself told the entire story with remarkable clarity. On the par 5 18th hole, after torrential rain had left the playing surface muddy and difficult, DeChambeau's tee shot found a messy lie. From that uncomfortable position, he absolutely flushed a fairway wood into the heart of the green. That was not a conservative play or a management decision. That was the shot of someone who had decided he was not going to lose. Rahm, by contrast, had the cleaner lie in the fairway and appeared to hold the positional advantage, but his second shot found the greenside bunker. He reached the green in 3, missed his birdie attempt to the right, and suddenly the door was wide open. DeChambeau's eagle putt finished just short of the hole, and he tapped in for the win. That sequence captures everything relevant about where both players are right now. Rahm had the cleaner path and the better setup, but Bryson hit the bolder shot at the moment that mattered most, and that is the kind of competitive instinct that separates players who win from players who almost win. Beyond the individual title, DeChambeau's Crushers GC also claimed the team event by a single shot. The Crushers lineup of DeChambeau, Paul Casey, Charles Howell III, and Anirban Lahiri edged the Southern Guards, a South African contingent featuring Louis Oosthuizen, Dean Burmester, Brendan Grace, and Charles Schwartzel. That team result adds another dimension to the week because this tournament itself represented a landmark moment for LIV Golf. It was the circuit's first event on African soil, and more than 100,000 spectators were expected across the week. DeChambeau was not just winning another stop on a schedule. He was winning one of the most significant atmosphere events LIV Golf has staged, in a setting that carried genuine meaning for the local players and for the tour's broader ambitions. It also sharpens the comparison with Singapore in a meaningful way. The previous week, Rikuya Hoshino missed a short putt late and essentially delivered that win to DeChambeau. South Africa was an entirely different story. Bryson had to go take it himself with a monster second shot under pressure in the playoff, and he did exactly that. For anyone who had written off Singapore as fortunate timing, South Africa provided an immediate and emphatic response. 2 wins, 2 completely different scripts, same outcome. That is when the golf world stops describing someone as hot and starts treating them as a legitimate force. When DeChambeau is playing at this level, the conversation never stays within LIV Golf's borders. It reaches the majors conversation, it reaches casual fans who do not follow every weekly result, and it reaches people who might have decided they were done paying attention to him. Ignoring a player who just won in Singapore and South Africa in consecutive weeks, while beating Jon Rahm and navigating a field packed with major champions, Ryder Cup veterans, and proven international names, is essentially impossible for anyone who takes professional golf seriously. That reality leads directly into the second story, because once DeChambeau started stacking results this way, the reaction reportedly did not stay confined to one side of professional golf's ongoing divide. According to reporting, it began generating attention in places where his name carries complicated history but undeniable commercial weight. Reuters confirmed the back-to-back wins, the playoff result over Rahm, the 5 total LIV titles, and the emotional reaction following the South Africa finish. That foundation is solid. The broader commercial and political implications are where the confirmed facts give way to industry conversation that deserves honest context. What the reporting claims, through multiple industry sources, is that DeChambeau's recent run has pushed beyond leaderboard performance into measurable territory around viewership, social media engagement, and internal discussions at the PGA Tour level. Sources described as close to tour leadership reportedly believe that internal conversations have intensified and that exploratory contact may have occurred involving possible collaboration or a return scenario. The Masters is identified as a central reference point in those discussions, since DeChambeau remains eligible for Augusta regardless of his tour affiliation. The obstacles cited are his existing LIV Golf commitments, the ongoing institutional tensions between the competing tours, and unresolved governance questions that have defined professional golf's fractured landscape for years. None of that rumor layer should be treated as confirmed fact, and presenting it otherwise would be dishonest. But the underlying logic is entirely believable for anyone who understands how performance and attention interact in professional sports. DeChambeau has always been one of the clearest examples in modern golf of a player whose presence generates engagement that extends well beyond his actual results. Cameron Young winning the Players' Championship is a genuine major story. Matt Fitzpatrick winning the Valero Texas Open is a legitimate accomplishment worth acknowledging. But DeChambeau's recent run carries a different gravitational pull. It is louder, more emotionally combustible, and more likely to generate conversation in places well beyond the golf world's core audience. Whether that shows up in television ratings, social media interaction, podcast discussions, or simply the volume of group chat debate among everyday fans, it alters the atmosphere around the entire sport. Jon Rahm's presence in that playoff also deserves its own emphasis, because his involvement is not a minor detail. This was not DeChambeau outlasting a forgettable leaderboard on a quiet Sunday. He had a match-run stroke for stroke through 72 holes and then beat him directly in a playoff, and Rahm is not someone you dismiss. He is one of the biggest names in the world game, a player whose own LIV move generated enormous discussion and whose competitive record speaks for itself. Add Cameron Smith, Sergio Garcia, Dustin Johnson, Tyrrell Hatton, Paul Casey, Lee Westwood, Ian Poulter, and Abraham Answer to that same leaderboard, and the result stops being a LIV-specific story and becomes a professional golf story in the broadest sense. It reinforces the uncomfortable reality that the talent divide created by LIV golf still shapes the entire ecosystem of men's professional golf, and every significant result from either side reopens the same fundamental question about where the most compelling players and the most watchable competition actually reside. With the Masters approaching, that question becomes impossible to sidestep. DeChambeau is eligible. Rahm is eligible. Cameron Smith is eligible. Dustin Johnson is eligible. Sergio Garcia is eligible. Tyrrell Hatton is eligible. Brooks Koepka carries his own relevance as a LIV player with Augusta history, even though he was not among the top names at this particular finish. The Masters forces everything back together, at least emotionally and narratively. It demands comparisons, generates storylines, and compels fans on every side of golf's ongoing disagreements to ask honestly who looks genuinely dangerous heading into the first major of the year. Based on current form, DeChambeau is absolutely on that list, and probably near the top of it. That is the most important takeaway from everything that has happened in the last 2 weeks. One player is performing at a level that transcends the boundaries of the tour that employs him, carrying the kind of momentum and emotional narrative weight that the entire sport tends to organize itself around heading into Augusta. Whether the reunion rumors have any real substance or remain permanently in the category of wishful speculation, the pressure that DeChambeau's performance creates is genuine, visible, and building in real time. And the Masters has not even started yet.